How's it going out there, everybody? This is W.F.S, your doctor. And we have an exclusive coming from Giant Freaking Robot, Star Trek Lower Deck movie in development. Okay, so before we get into this article, first I'd like to ask if you could subscribe to the channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. And for those of you who have subscribed, thank you so much. Star Trek has definitely run into quite a few problems. Basically, starting with the Kelvin timeline Star Trek films, starting in 2009 with J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot. We started out with Star Trek 2009, which was, for all purposes, a fantastic success. It was for reimagining Star Trek. Then we move on to the Wrath of Khan ripoff, Into Darkness, and then, unfortunately, into Star Trek Beyond. And from that point on, actually from Star Trek Into Darkness, we slowly started losing fandom. And then when Star Trek Into Darkness came out, it was a complete wash. No one really liked it. To be fair about it, it wasn't bad. But the problem with the Star Trek movies was they just kept stealing source material from the original Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3 films. It felt like royal ripoffs to me. But then we move into the Star Trek Discovery. Very dark show. And what they did with Klingons wasn't very good at all. No one liked that. Then we have Picard, Trainwreck, which pretty much wiped out a lot of fandom's love for it completely. And that's where we come into Star Trek Picard Season 3, where, hey, we're not going to bring the cast back at the beginning of the project. By the way, we're bringing the cast of The Next Generation back because, it was something we meant to do even though we didn't mean to do it. Now, they have tried to make Star Trek movie after movie. Hey, we're coming out with Star Trek 4. We're coming out with Star Trek 4, Star Trek 4. And it keeps coming, canceling, finally removed off of the production set, the production line for making the film. And then, of course, we have back onto the Star Trek universe. We're going to make a Section 31 series. Nope, doesn't happen. By the way, we're thinking of making a Star Trek 7 of 9 series. We may be bringing Captain Janeway back. You know where I'm going with this. This is dragging on. So now we get this. An exclusive Star Trek Lower Decks movie in development. Now, to be fair about this, I have watched Star Trek Lower Decks, and it's just something I've tried to get into, and every once in a while it makes me laugh, but for the most part, I just feel like they're not hitting the mark. There's a fan base for it. I'm not going to deny that. There is. Just for me, I like traditional Star Trek, and when I see them ripping into this, it kind of bothers me, especially since Picard has been such a disaster. But let's take a look at this. I know there's a few of you out there, maybe more than a few, that may enjoy this movie. So let's take a look at what's going on with Star Trek Lower Decks. Apparently, the crew of the USS Cerritos is on their way to the big screen. Our trusted and proven source tells us that Star Trek Lower Deck movie is being developed by Paramount. We don't know much about the plot of the film or if there even is one in mind yet, but regardless, if a Lower Deck film is realized, it would mean a number of historic firsts for the science fiction franchise. Yeah, an animated Star Trek, a kind of parody, a comedy of it, if you will, is something that's never been done before, and they're going to take that to the screen. The most obvious Trek landmark, assuming the Lower Decks movie is animated like the series, is that it would mean the first film in the franchise that wasn't live action, while Trek has now been home to 3 animated series, including the early 70s Star Trek the Animated Series and more current Star Trek Prodigy. All 13 films have been live action. Star Trek Lower Decks film would also represent the first movie in the franchise that allowed a crew for a ship other than the Enterprise. The first 6 films focused on the crew of the original series. The Next Generation crew started in the following 4, and the 3 final films were the revamped and recast versions of the old generation in the Kelvin timeline. A couple of characters, most notably Kate McGowan, Catherine Janeway, in 2002's Star Trek Nemesis has enjoyed cameos in the film, but so far none of the non-Enterprise spin-off Deep Space Nine, Discovery, Picard, Prodigy, and Voyager have been brought to the big screen. Looking at the development while considering the news that the previously announced Star Trek 4 had been taken off Paramount's schedule could signal a shift in terms of the studio's targeting audience. Well, Chris Pine, forgive me, I can't pronounce the man's name, Slandon, and the rest of the Kelvin Timeline crew are comparatively new to the roles. The characters they're playing are part of the old guard. Paramount may see a Lower Deck movie as a better way to net new fans from the Generation Z and younger crowd. Basically, they're trying to find a way to put money in their pocket, get more money out of Star Trek on the big screen, because there hasn't been one out in a long time, and the last two films have been questionable. As I said before, they ripped off The Wrath of Khan and The Search for Spock, and people didn't like it, and now they're going to try and find a new way to bring Star Trek to the screen. And yes, the Surreals would definitely be a switch, and an animated series would be a change of pace for it too. Like Discovery and Picard, Star Trek Lower Decks premiered back before CBS All Access rebranded to Paramount Plus, set 1 year after the events of Nemesis and considered canonical to the franchise. I have a hard time believing that one. The animated series is nevertheless a lot more adult in terms of content, and mostly a comedy series that loves to poke fun at most of the overused tropes in Trek. If the Lower Deck movie does emerge from development, new viewers will likely find a similar to the popular Rick and Morty, not quite as mature in terms of violence and sexual content, but certainly with more blood and naughty words than your average Trek project. Okay, people, what do you think about all this? If this does happen, would you go to the movies to see this? Or would this be something you'd be satisfied with seeing on Paramount Plus, like the series? Again, I've watched the show, and some of it's not bad, but some of the humor I just think is just dull, terrible. But to each their own, I guess. So please, I want to hear from all of you about this. What do you think about this Star Trek Lower Deck movie in development? Do you think that's something that you'd want to see? Give me your thoughts, give me your comments, and click the like button if you like what you see here. And also, please, once again, click that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. I'm W.F.S, your doctor, and till next time, my friends, God bless.